You know, pets, plants, and kids, anyhow they perceive about whether the person is trustworthy or not, without any communication. They will perceive that whether the person is trustworthy or not. Scientifically, this was proved. A baby can also make out whether the person who is holding him is trustworthy or not. But then there are other sides. I'm not going into that. But at least in every action, we demonstrate one footstep, one towards the trust. With, of course, knowledge and technology as a tool and as the minimum condition, hygienic minimum condition, and knowledge, obviously, knowledge will keep you separate from the whole, from the others. But once the customer is attracted towards you by your knowledge, you have to retain it and continuously preserve it and grow it. For that, you require your commitment, which is required to be demonstrated.
Thank you, Mr. Debashish. I come to Rajesh lastly. Rajesh, anything that you would like to add on how to manage customers in a fluid environment where circumstances are changing?
Sure. I guess while I was hearing you, listening to you talk about technology and maybe a slight addition to what Pankaj was mentioning earlier, it sounded like music to my ears because it was in a way telling that if technology is the future, then me running a technology-based service delivery for financial advisors looks like my future is going to be bright too. Thanks for that. A few things I wanted to add in this context, if I can take a couple of minutes. Since we were talking about knowledge and since we were talking about technology, I have picked this one line from a very, very successful advisor in Singapore. He says, I wake up every Jan 1st with about $1 million worth of renewal commissions in my bank account. And I mean, I guess 14 years, top of the table, COT and all of that you know in insurance. Is highly successful person. I developed a great friendship with him, and he shared one thing with me. He said, I believe in that aspect of meeting customers, but in this kind of changing environment, I've slightly modified it. I believe that my practice had to be high touch and high tech. This is what he said in relation to that conversation around meeting customers. You know, is it necessary to be with them more often? The second aspect was knowledge. I guess a lot of this that we are deliberating today with respect to how do I stand out, how do I meet a customer's expectation, how do I become a better financial advisor, very bookish. It can be boring because you would see that all of us here can make very broad statements and you will have no takeaways. But I guess there are a lot of takeaways I have also been noting down to actually engage with advisors going forward. I wanted to drop 3 names with you. There is a book called The Excellent Advisor, written by Nick Murray. You must lay your hands on that book. There is another book which I would like to recommend in the context of the panel. That is about the behavioral aspect of customers. And that's an excellent book recently released. The author is Carl Richards. And the name of the book is The Behavior Gap. And he's got a website. He's given you tools. And his diagrams are copyrighted, so you can't copy-paste them on your brochures. Please be careful. But excellent stuff. And the third that I would like to share with you, and these are things that you should actually try and do, because what's the benefit of listening to a panel if you can't act on some of the things that are being discussed? And the third is just search for Ben Steen. B-E-N-S-T-E-I-N, Ben Steen. Ben Steen has got a lot of books for financial advisors. Take any title, all his books are great. Many of what I share with you are things that I've picked up from these practitioners. They have done it themselves. They have shared their knowledge with the world. But when I actually go back and ask a lot of people, have you read these authors? Even within our own industry, where we are dealing with people's money, some of these brilliant stuff have not really seen the light of the day in India. I guess you must try and get a few. If you don't get, I have a couple of copies, I can lend it to you. but you please have to return it back to me. Yes, on this aspect of, on this question around how does one then stand out when so many providers are there, customers are very demanding. I have actually seen in the last 3 years, advisors in Bombay, and a few of them are seated in this audience, and I can see one sitting right in the last row. They run a firm called Circle Wealth Advisors, and I can see him smiling there. I have seen people in this city change the way they deal with clients, earn the trust, and therefore today the clients come back to them and give more money. It is only because that they've always tried to do it from the context of the client. And I would borrow a line from Robin Sharma. He says, whenever you transition, and that's what is happening in India today, whenever you transition from any activity to another, when there is a change is always difficult in the beginning. Because today you are having a situation in India where even if you are a trusted advisor, even if you have the best of knowledge, you have CWM certification, you have a few other certifications, customers are not yet aware of these certifications, so they really don't know because you are an MBBS, MD, a DM, and FRCS, a surgeon. Do you actually go to the surgeon and quiz him for his technical capabilities? You just understand that if this guy has got all these titles, I go and lie on the table unconscious, he will do the surgery, I'll wake up. That's the faith I have, right? That's what we do, right? We just do that. We are not going and asking the surgeon, explain to me, how do you cut the valve in, here, or how do you do this surgical procedure? So when I underwent a surgery, the surgeon actually gave me the choice. Do you want to see your own surgery or do you want to sleep? I said, I want to see my surgery. And it was on the knee, so I could see it. So that is transparency even in medical field today. So when you are actually doing these for your customers, you should be asking yourself that how am I able to show this to my customer? How can I make him believe that what I am intrinsically here is also translated on the other side, for which you have no other choice but to enhance your own learning and pick up the art of reading his psychology, his thinking. Because if you sing to that tune, he will hear that tune. If he likes classical and you sing rock, he is going to be disillusioned. So you got to understand the customer psyche, and that you can pick up if you actually read books. Dr. Kahneman or Carl Richards, the most appropriate, you should be doing that. The last bit is about the way we deal. Most of the time, and the difficulty is around the fact that most of us in this room, we are not having access to the customer's entire information about wealth. And therefore, when you do a plan, and I had a question in the morning coming from the audience, how do you actually plan for it? In fact, we've just been trying this out over the last couple of years. I have tried to do it myself with some of my family, close friends. I don't do financial planning, but I try some tricks to understand whether it works or not, so that I can come and tell you whether it works. One thing that certainly works is ask him for the plan to do 3 things. What happens if you live? What happens if you live but you don't live healthy? And what happens if you die? Up front. Have you thought about these 3 scenarios? Simple stuff. I picked this up again from another practitioner. 3 things. What happens if you live healthy? What happens if you live but not healthy? And what happens if you die? Have you planned for these 3 scenarios? And the moment I put this question, the guy will say, okay, I would like to plan for one of these scenarios. I say, are you sure that that's going to be your scenario? He says, no. So eventually what will happen is that you will have to plan for all the 3 scenarios. And when you plan for a scenario that he would die, for example, and it has to be upfront, because in insurance you are always told don't use the word death, right? But when in financial planning you can't avoid using that word. It's a fact of life. If you're born, you would die.